I help people heal and build a life that they love. If you have an instinct to ask a question, don't. For me, things like being unfaithful, oversharing, telling people things that did not earn the right to hear them, that was so normal to me. We are very quick to adapt when we have no choice. I mean, whatever we need to do to be in proximity to the caregivers that are in front of us, even if they're the worst caregivers in the world, we're going to try to figure it out so we can live. It's our biological nature. I am so clear about who I am today and that my story matters and that there are lives out there that I might be able to touch and help and save. That has given me such great purpose. You could literally be betrayed in the worst way and never speak to that person again and see it in a compassionate way.
Welcome to Hello Dreamer, the podcast that uncovers stories of resilience, ambition, and transformation. Today's guest is Dr. Samantha Harte, a trauma-informed physical therapist, best-selling author, and host of the Truth About Addiction podcast. With 14 years of sobriety, Dr. Harte has dedicated her life to helping others heal physically, emotionally, and mentally. In her book, Breaking the Circuit, she breaks down the complexities of trauma and recovery, sharing actionable insights on rewarding the mind and reclaiming your life. In this episode, we explore her journey, the realities of addiction, and her work in healing and recovery. It's a raw, honest conversation that will leave you inspired and empowered. So let's dive in. So I want to start with just learning about you. Who are you? Tell me your story and let's go from there. Because I know there's a lot to unpack. So you started.
I know, it's funny, people say, what do you do? It used to be, I'm a doctor of physical therapy, I have a private practice in Santa Monica. And then they could ask more from there. And now I'm just like, does somebody have a scroll?
Yeah.
Because
you do a lot.
I would say I'm a coach, an author, and a speaker. And if somebody asked me more about coaching, the next thing I'd probably say is I help people heal and build a life that they love. What does that even mean and how do I do that, right? I did get a degree that's real fancy in physical therapy, but the thing I actually always wanted to do when I was young is be a performer. So I loved singing and dancing from the gate. I also grew up in a house where it was volatile financially, emotionally, and by the time I feel like my consciousness came online, I was in early adolescence. My parents were super unhappily married. My dad was in the basement because that's where he deserved to be, according to my mother. And my mother's word was God. And she did not want me pursuing the arts. She felt like her whole life was unstable, especially financially. And if you get a degree, nobody can take it from you. And I was really good in school, and I was a hardwired perfectionist. So getting straight A's was so comforting to me. If you study this much, then you will get the A. If you get the A, then you will get rewarded and loved and revered, not just by your mother, but culturally. And if you keep getting A's, you can get a degree. And if you get the degree, nobody can take it from you.
So that was programmed into you.
Programmed. Programmed. And then you couple that with this mother who also had a prescription pill issue. So I remember my earliest memory being 4, and I came up to her and I said, why are you taking those pills every night? And it's because when she took them, she became so different from the person I had seen during the day. So it was scaring me. Now, I didn't know that at the time. This is hindsight. And she said, do you like the things that you have?
Your mom asked you that at 4?
And I said, yes. She said, well, if you like the things you have, I have to be able to afford them. And in order for me to afford them, I have to make money. In order for me to make money, I have to work. And in order for me to work, I have to sleep. These pills help me sleep. The conversation was over. So what did I learn in that moment? I learned if you have an instinct to ask a question, don't. And your mom could burst out into rage or tears at any moment. So do whatever you need to do and become whoever you need to become to make her happy.
To prevent that.
Yeah.
So I was highly vigilant as a young girl. My first addiction, if you will, was self-abandonment. It was, who do I need to be to make mom happy?
Yeah.
Period. End of story. And then I had this emotionally absent dad in the basement They would always scream at each other because by the time I was 12 or 13, my dad had gambled away a ton of money that was supposed to be left for my sister and I, and he was very controlling in the early years of their marriage. And when she found that out, she decided, I'm going to take all the power back. And that looks like I'm going to cheat on you. I'm going to live how I want to live. When we have money, I'm going to spend it all. I have no respect for money. I'm going to tell my kids everything I'm doing and everything that you did. But by the way, even though he's a really bad husband, he's a great father. So I was so confused and so overexposed to all of this.
Yeah.
And then I had this older sister who was experimenting with drugs and sex. And so for me, things like being unfaithful, things like drugs and alcohol, oversharing, telling people things that did not earn the right to hear them, that was so normal to me. So I had this unbelievable instability in my house. Then I really wanted to be a star, but that industry is so incredibly unstable and there's no clear path forward. And I don't have the support of my mother. And so the one thing I can double down on is my grades, my looks, my body. So by the time I leave high school, and high school was such a tumultuous time, it was a place where I was sort of loved and hated because I was popular and pretty and talented and I could dance and I could do all these things. But then I would tell people things about my life and they would tell everybody else about them because I shouldn't have been trusting them. And also I'm sitting here thinking, well, isn't this sort of normal? Or if it doesn't feel normal, I needed a place to share it. Yeah. And these are kids and it's the worst time ever to be sharing details of your life because everyone's going to talk about you. So I would come in and...
Well, then a part of you is like, I want to share it with somebody because you have all of this bottled up in me. So like, I'm going to share it with my friends and then you don't trust them because then they... So that turns into a whole nother trauma building inside of you. Totally. It's like you can't trust talking to anybody about anything. And,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really learned how to keep my head up, but it was a complete facade. Like I'm going to show everybody that I'm fine, even though everyone's calling me a slut and a lesbian and a this and a that. And meanwhile, I was dying inside and I was coming home to total instability. So by the time I left high school and went away to college, I was like, okay, I get to go to a place that's brand new, start over. I went to Boston University. I was like, watch out, world. You think I'm going to gain the freshman 15 and you think I'm going to flunk out my first semester because that's what I kept hearing. Watch out, watch out. And so what did I do? I got thinner and I got such good grades that I got this distinguished award at Boston University, which was really hard to get because of how well I was doing. And at the same time, I fell in love with a guy who didn't believe in monogamy, but I was sure I could change his mind. And I got a professor that would not give me anything other than a C. And this was the first time in my life anything like that was happening. So at the same time that I was sort of seemingly doing well on the outside, I was absolutely spiritually suffering with no tools. So what this ended up looking like as I moved through sophomore year is trying to act like I could be in a relationship with this man, even though it was open. And I would always know when he was with somebody else, and we would spend so much time together that the times we weren't, it was so clear to me. I had made myself bend until I broke. I was dating other people, even though I was completely in love with him, because I could be that cool girl. Yeah. Because any effort to contain him and have him be just mine failed. Yeah. And I couldn't get the good grade from the professor. So finally I plagiarized. And when I got that paper back, I had never plagiarized before or since in my whole life. He writes a big 0 in red on the paper and he writes, "See me after class." And he has all the websites that I plagiarized from stapled to the back. And he was like, "I am reporting this to the academic committee and they will determine what happens to you." By the end of sophomore year at Boston University, I had gotten an 18-month suspension. I went into that committee wanting to just tell the truth. I was so afraid. I fucked up. I'm so sorry. And my mom was dating this alcoholic boyfriend who was like, "We are going to let them know that this is ridiculous. You're such a good kid." He prepared a script for me to recite that was so against my knowing. Here we are again, not trusting my knowing. I just want to tell the truth. I made a mistake. I was so scared of failing that this is what I did. Nope. I'm justifying what I did. I'm lucky I didn't get an expulsion, because that would have been on my permanent record. But I still got an 18-month suspension. So what? Now I'm going to come back to Boston University as a junior while all my friends are about to graduate. And
is that where you graduated from?
No.
Okay.
There's
a lot to unpack.
I know.
There.
I got this isn't even anything yet.
I know.
I got my suspension, and at the same time I found out on the one night my boyfriend, can I even call him that?
Yeah.
My lover,
yeah.
he was graduating because he was a senior and I was a sophomore. So I only had a little bit of time left with him before it was going to end anyway.
Yeah.
And this one night we had planned for me to come over, and I go to his apartment. It's like 1 a.m. He's not there. Mm-hmm. Obsessive for the next 24 hours. I literally go to his apartment. I'm like peeking through the window, and I know he didn't go home that night. And there was this one girl I knew he really, really loved that he dated before I met him, who he swore he wasn't seeing anymore, who he swore he wasn't having sex with anymore. And sure enough, I find out, in fact, yes, they have been. Yes, he had been. And I end up getting an STD from him. So my whole life blows up. And I have so much shame. You could imagine, right? Because now the thing that makes me worth anything at all has just collapsed. And so what do?
Like a permanent STD?
No.
Okay, so just like gonorrhea, not that
HPV.
It's not. Okay, HPV.
Which feels very like, who hasn't gotten HPV in college or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the time, I'm thinking I'm with this
a
guy.
big deal.
I can at least trust him, right? And so it was, again, looking back, this was one great attempt at trying to control the world around me.
Yeah.
Into utter exhaustion and failure. And boy, were there going to be so many more attempts from that moment on. What I ended up doing with this experience was saying, okay, now, fuck you, Mom. You didn't want me to be an artist? Well, maybe this is my shot. Maybe I'm going to just paint a picture and tell myself and the rest of the world that I'm taking a year off from school to pursue my actual dream. Because while I was at BU, I just picked communications as a major.
So you put the doctor on hold and you started.
Yeah. I didn't even know I wanted to be a doctor. When I went to BU, I just got a degree in communications.
When did you complete that?
My degree?
Yeah, your degree.
I graduated with my doctorate in 2010.
2010, okay.
I was in school forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I did BU for 2 years, then I took a year off. Then I had to finish undergrad before I could even think of where I might go for graduate school.
Yeah. So you started school, all of that happened. You took time off, you did the arts, and then you started school again and completed your degree in 2010. How many years were in that timeline?
10.
Wow. Okay. It's so crazy, everything that you're saying, because like it literally gives me the chills, and I'm sure you too, because same with me. Like, I don't know if I told you this much, but like my first memory of my mom is her driving me to school with a red Dixie cup full of wine, because my mom was an alcoholic. And she would like lock herself in these casitas, or that we had always had like a guest house in our house, in these rooms, and I would do the same thing. I've no one's ever said it to me that way, but I would walk on eggshells to not set her off in a certain way, because she would just go in these rooms and paint and build and do all these artistic things drunk out of her mind, like from the time she woke up until the time we went to bed. And I would do everything as a kid to like try to avoid her and avoid the situation. But I guess I never realized that I was trying to do that until you said it in that way. It's just very interesting. Like everything that you just said, the dynamic in high school, same thing. Like that is like me to a freaking T. It's like, it is. It's wild. I'm like, my mom was addicted to gambling. I know your dad was, but it's like.
They lived in Vegas too.
Everything that you witnessed, like I have been there. And it's funny how you're like, oh, this is nothing. Like whatever, like this is nothing. We haven't even got into it. And like, I would say that same thing, like, because it is nothing to us because we freaking lived it. But to somebody like him and the average person, when you tell your story, they're like, how the fuck did you survive? Right?
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. Kids are so crafty. I mean, we are very quick to adapt when we have no choice. I mean, whatever we need to do to be in proximity to the caregivers that are in front of us, even if they're the worst caregivers in the world, we're going to try to figure it out so we can live. It's our biological nature. The problem is when we adapt these coping patterns and they follow us well into adulthood. And I would say my self-abandonment, my control issues, those things have followed me well into adulthood, no matter how much spiritual work I've done, which has been decades and decades of therapy and spiritual work and sobriety, right? Because that's a huge part of my story. I'm not just the people pleaser who cares for the sick addict who wants to abandon myself at the expense of taking care of them. I'm also the addict.
Yeah. I feel like you're really good at labeling, like your, I don't know what you want to call them, faults, I guess. I mean, they're not faults, but like, I'm not good at that. Like, I know I have those faults, but I don't put a label on them.
Like being honest with yourself.
Yeah. So, like, how do you determine, like, I guess that you have that, like, you pinpoint, like, self-abandonment and pinpoint, you know? Because to me, like, if you were to ask me, I would just be like, oh, I have childhood trauma, you know?
Yeah.
But I can't pinpoint what it is.
That's a great question. So, you know, I'm going to be 16 years sober, God willing, next
Congrats.
month.
Like,
That's
no
awesome.
alcohol, nothing.
Thank you. No drugs, no alcohol.
It's funny. I think I was like, let's go get a drink or whatever after. And I'm like, fuck, I forgot.
Listen, mocktails are all the rage right now. So I feel like it's really cool to be sober.
Nighttime mocktails.
It was a lot harder to tell people that,
Yeah.
you know, 10, 15 years ago. They're
For
like,
sure.
what?
I mean, we don't drink a lot, but I still like a drink with dinner.
Girl, if I could have a drink like a normal person, I would also like a drink with dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing.
To answer your question, we're jumping ahead a little, but that's fine. You know, I got introduced to 12-step programs a long time ago after I overdosed on cocaine.
Yeah.
And I also overdosed on cocaine the night that I got accepted into my doctoral program for physical therapy. So if that does not capture the way that I was living my life, which was you work hard, you play hard. You get the A, you get the body, you get the boyfriend. You have an inner critic that is telling you no matter how well you do, you are never, ever going to be enough. And then to alleviate yourself from that unrelenting anxiety, you're going to go have a fucking drink. And if you get a little too drunk and somebody has cocaine, you'll do a little bit of that. You'll level back out, lather, rinse, repeat.
Yep.
So this was a great celebration. You know, there was nothing wrong on this day. There was everything right. And I go and do so much cocaine with a woman who was 10 years older than me that I overdose. What did I do the very next day? I did cocaine off of my sister's fingernail. Okay. This is the level of dysfunction that I'm living in. I bring it over to her in-laws' house because if you're an addict and you're not done, you're not going to throw away your leftover cocaine. That is the dumbest thing you could ever do. Even though you almost died, there's no logic, there's no reason. I bring it to her, I tell her, oh my God, something so scary happened last night. And she was like, Sam, you just did too much. Let me help you. Puts it on her fingernail. And I sniff it like a good little soldier, like a good little sister. Okay. But nevertheless, I called this one guy that I knew who had time sober. He took me to a meeting. I sat in the back. I hear the 12 steps and I'm like, no.
So a part of you
not.
was like, I mean, you had these, I guess I don't want to say like bad examples, but like you had these examples that did drugs, but like a part of you knew you're like, I don't want to be this person. This isn't me.
Yep.
I need to get help.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is not okay. I mean, of all the things I could control, clearly I was at least losing control over this.
Yeah.
Right. You could not ignore that. But I had no idea how to stop. And the idea of having to reroute my entire life and start to take inventory and go inward and do the kind of work that allows me to see my character traits and go, I'm in that default of character again. I'm doing that thing that I want to do because I feel afraid right now. I'm trying to control people, places, and things. Like that's what the steps ended up teaching me. But in the beginning, I was like, I don't need help with any of this. Look at my life. With the exception of this cocaine problem, I'm about to be a goddamn doctor.
Like you would make an excuse for it. Yeah.
I mean, but
I'm running the world. So what if I do a line of coke?
So what?
Yeah.
I mean, culturally, we get rewarded
Yeah.
for these levels of accomplishment. I looked good. I had the job. I had the boyfriend. I had the body. I had the degree.
Yeah.
Why would I all of a
do
sudden
a line of coke and I'm yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Or
get it.
maybe I can't do that, but don't tell me I suddenly have to believe in some kind of God that, by the way, my mom said didn't exist. And her word is God to me. So if she's telling me that anyone who believes in God is an absolute idiot, and the greatest thing about me is my intellect, what does that mean to me if I'm suddenly going to dismantle my beliefs? That means my whole identity is shattering.
Yeah.
That's what AA was asking me at the time to do, was to collapse my identity and to release all of these ingrained patterns in childhood that kept me safe.
Okay, so I want to get into that because I know you wrote a book on your version of like AA, right?
Yep. of the 12 steps.
So we had the 10-year college experience, like quit arts, go back, doctorate.
Yep.
Right? You're in physical therapy. You're doing physical therapy for how long? And then what are you doing now? Because you're not doing physical therapy anymore.
Not exactly. No. I mean, listen, if somebody needs help with their body and they want to hire me just for that, fine.
Yes.
But that is not at the epicenter
Well,
of
and
what
that's
I'm here
not your
to do.
like passion now,
No.
right? Like you've evolved, you're this new person
Yep.
because you've gone through all of this trauma
Yep.
and all of these experiences. Like I feel like you're on a path now to help others.
Yes.
And you want your voice to be heard.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So how did you transition from physical therapy to that?
Yeah. So here I am. I have my degree. I'm a physical therapist, and I get and stay sober, but not really because I'm ready. Because even after that introduction to the meetings, I still kept using. Then the boyfriend I was dating found a prescription pill bottle that my father was driving into the city for me because he was the family drug dealer. And I was like, uh-oh, he's going to leave me. So I go back to the meetings because I think he's going to leave me, not because I was ready on a soul level. So
you were trying to people please other people,
100%.
go to the freaking meetings,
go to
and
the
go through
meetings,
the process.
right? So
Yeah.
I become this doctor of physical therapy, and I start to have the fog clear by going to enough meetings. And I'm like, maybe there's some level of spiritual work that I can get behind, but not the God thing. So I did the best I could. I did things like a 4th step, which is writing out what you're resentful over, who you're angry at, and what your part in the resentment was. Just not to blame or shame, but just to gain agency over, every time I take on a friendship that isn't reciprocal and I start to fix them, and then when I need their help, they don't show up, I get angry. And now I'm stuck with the anger, but maybe it's because I'm filling a need that's very deep. And I need to pay attention to that going forward.
I have that same problem too.
Of course we do, because it's what we did as kids.
Yeah.
Right? So you could
Well,
start.
because like I know that I'm gonna fucking deliver and I'm gonna be there for you. So if you're not there for me, like fuck you, is how I feel a lot of the time.
Yeah, but we tend to pick what we saw as kids because it's so it's literally on a body level familiar to us. So we have to unlearn that stuff, and whatever feels seductive in friendship or romance can often become dangerous, especially if it's a pattern. Like, why do I keep getting myself into these friendships that end up like this, right? So I'm in the rooms, I'm doing some of the work, but I don't believe in God, and I'm still very much doubling down on what I can control, and then my marriage starts to fall apart. So this guy that I had been with through the entire addiction process
You're
is
still with him, right? Yes.
pulling away.
Guy.
And I'm I'm going into fits of rage because I am sure that anything I say or do is going to change this man's mind, just like the guy in college.
Yeah.
This time I'm going to say and do the right thing so he forgives me for all the cheating I did before we got married, because that's why he was pulling away. This was my fault. I deserved
you cheated
what I
on
got.
him before you guys got married.
Yep. And of course we didn't heal. We didn't pause. We didn't go to therapy. We just trudged forward. I got sober, threw a wrench in his plans to leave me. And he was like, I kind of want to see what this is all about. And then he really wasn't ready to see what it was all about. He had way too much anger. And I'm sure he's cheating on me, but he's swearing to God that he's not the cheater, I am. And instead of surrendering spiritually or taking my own inventory or taking a look at what was coming up inside of me in terms of the fear of losing him and what that meant for who I was and whether I was lovable, that was too scary. And so I just kept deflecting. And finally I hit spiritual rock bottom after sleeping on people's couches for months. A girl in sobriety was like, you need to get a place.
Were you sober during this time?
I was sober.
Okay.
I was physically abstinent, but spiritually or emotionally, I wasn't sober at all, right? I had no surrender in my life. I had no peace. I had no access to joy or power. And then this woman comes into my life and she's like, what if we do the steps on your marriage? So instead of the 12 steps being about substance and whatever substance you've been addicted to for however many years, we're going to make it about the matter at hand. Why does this matter? This matters to answer your question because this is eventually what my book became, which didn't get written until 10 years after the fact, but I have been using the steps in this way ever since. So I'm not powerless over drugs and alcohol today. I mean, I'm not using them. That's not what I was trying to go and escape to in my marriage, but I'm powerless over my marriage. I'm powerless over my husband.
Yeah.
Over changing his mind, making him forgive me. And when I try to exert power over him, my life becomes unmanageable in the following ways. All of that's important. But the next part that's really important that isn't in the steps is, well, then what do I have the power to change? If not him, then what? Me. Right?
So then how did you go about that? How
So
did you go about changing you?
So, well, the steps are in order for a reason. So if I start to sift out that I have control over not my first thought, but my second or third. So I could think, I can't believe this is fucking happening, right? I can't control that. But then if I go, I wonder if I just say this, then I'm feeding into this story again that I have no access to power over.
Yeah.
So the next thought is, oh my God, what's coming up for me right now? Because I really want to focus on him. But actually, I'm so scared.
So who taught you to do all of that, though?
So this woman took me through the steps. I had somebody with me, but I also have been in bad therapy and good therapy.
Yeah.
So there was some introduction to therapy
So
during
through
this time.
therapy and steps, you basically changed these patterns in you.
Yep.
That's what got you sober. That's what saved your marriage.
Yep.
And you did all of that while you were in physical therapy, like still being a physical
running
therapist.
a practice. So part of what happened in the step work and my separation was I had no financial stability. Here I am again as a kid, right? The joke's on me. My mom said to get a degree to be stable. I graduate with $100,000 of debt and I'm making $33 an hour as a doctor. And I was like, and I had no support from my husband in the separation. And I'm like, I better figure something out. So as a result of doing the step work, one of the most amazing things that happened was during the 9th step, it's making an amends. I had made so many amends to other people. And this woman said, have you ever made an amends to yourself? I ran on my ability to critique myself. I ran on my perfectionism. So it wasn't even in the realm of possibility that I would let myself off the hook in general, let alone for what was going on in my marriage, because I thought, this is what I get for what I did to him.
Yeah.
So the fact that she opened that up and I got to start practicing, what would I be saying to myself if I was someone who did forgive myself for my behavior? So
what does that look like? Like positive affirmations or?
It looks like becoming aware of every time that negative voice shows up. So tuning up my awareness and going, oh, there it is again.
Which, I mean, if you're aware, you hear that voice in your head.
You hear it all. And we all have that voice.
So it's a way for you to retrain that voice when it comes up and you say different things.
Correct. Then I literally go, if you want to be a person who forgives themselves, because a person who speaks this way doesn't forgive themselves.
Yep.
So if you want to be a person who forgives and loves themselves, what would you say? And I have to come up with it myself.
Still to this day, you do this.
Oh yeah. But now I'm not run by the critical voice. Like she's in there. She's in the boardroom, in the meeting always, but she's not in the seat of CEO.
How long did it take for you to overpower that voice?
Well, here's what happened. By stopping the voice that was causing shame, by slowing it down and giving some space to come up with something new. Yes. But also what I started to hear was my intuitive voice. I couldn't hear it because my critical voice was so loud. My intuitive voice sounded so different. She was calm, clear, curious, and compassionate. I always say that, 4 C's. She said, what if you start your own business? Where are all these patients going when they get discharged who are 60% better and you're trying to get them 100% better? Yeah. You should ask them. That's what she said to me. You should ask them. And so I did. And they were like, I don't know. I'm going to hire a trainer, I guess.
And so by calming that negative bitch in your head.
Yep.
I guess this angel came out and everything started making sense more.
Yep.
Right?
Was that acknowledging that it was there too? Had you even gotten to the point where you acknowledged that it was actually there and it was actually a thing?
The critical voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was an issue, but man, until my marriage fell apart and I realized that she was doubling down on, oh no, we're going to do what we've been trained to do as a young girl, like you did with your mom. We're going to fucking fix this. Yep. Don't you worry, Sam. And then she blew my life up. I mean, I was in a constant state of anxiety, depression, and rage during that year that I was sleeping on people's couches. So I had all the experience I needed at that point for it to be straight in my face to go, this ain't working anymore. It has literally worked for you up until this point. And she's been in there and she's been criticizing you, but it's kind of allowed you to accomplish a lot of things. So whatever, maybe that's where I get my edge, you know? I think a lot of people who are type A get really scared to be kinder to themselves because they think who am I going to be now? And what am I actually going to accomplish when actually you accomplish way more when that voice is more arrested. But I tried it until it absolutely didn't work anymore, even though I knew it was an issue.
Yeah. I feel like that's the hardest part though, for people to acknowledge that they have a voice and they're talking to themselves in a way, and that they want to change and talk to themselves in a different way.
That runs in parallel too.
Wouldn't you say? Because a lot of people would just go on,
Oh, this is
doing
normal.
those things,
Yeah, it is
right?
normal.
And
You have to
making those
acknowledge
excuses.
because everyone has those voices. I don't care if you come from trauma or not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In all walks of your life, with your friends, your friendship, professionally, etc. Like you're gonna have voices telling you, the devil on the shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, and which one are you gonna listen to? Who are you gonna give power to?
Yep.
Are you gonna acknowledge it? Are you gonna ignore it?
Yeah.
I think just like substance abuse, like acknowledging what's the first step in the 12-step program,
Yeah.
right? Same thing.
Well, and
Same
it's
fucking
like,
thing.
so another question. Do you feel like you could heal childhood trauma, or do you just find a way to live with it? Like, how do you heal childhood
question.
trauma?
I think you heal it by breaking the patterns that you learned from it. So if you're subconsciously operating out of childhood wounds, then you're stuck in them, and you will continue to attract the friendships where you're always the fixer and saver, and then you're always angry, right? So you heal it by finally getting, often in enough pain. Pain is a circuit breaker, which is good and bad, right? So in my marital crisis, that was enough pain for me to go, oh my God, I'm either going to spend the rest of my life trying to control the world around me to find peace, or I'm going to find another way to find peace. So if you can get woken up by pain or by something, maybe hearing a podcast that makes you go, holy shit, why is that landing the way that it is? Why is that piercing me? It's probably because there's something unhealed inside of me that's begging to be healed. And then you work to reroute that pattern into the healthy version, right? So what's a healthy version of dependency? It's like interdependency rather than codependency, right? So I'm always codependent on my peers because of what happened to me. I want them to love me enough so that I don't have to feel the lack of love I received from my mother and then my sister, or the instability. But the healthy version of that is inviting in the people who are really my equal, who can really hold space for me, who can show up equally the way that I show up for them, and not rushing to the person where there's lack, where I want to fix, because it's so seductive. And so I do think there's a way to heal. I think these things get scarred down. They've left marks on me, if that makes sense. But they're not open wounds.
Sense.
They're not open wounds anymore, and there's a big difference.
I heard something one time. It actually resonated, not really with an experience that I have, but just it made so much sense. Like imagine somebody is literally, they scratch you once every day on your face, every day, literally every day for years and years and years. Somebody, something, whatever it is, a voice, a person, whatever. And after a while, that thing becomes like a scar that's never going to go away. And when you look at yourself in the mirror every day, because where do we look? When we look in the mirror, look at ourselves in the face, right? And when you look at yourself in the mirror every day, it's going to be there. And it's like, are you going to acknowledge that it's there? Are you going to kind of like take into account that it's like a beautiful thing? Like I have to live with that. That's me. I'm a beautiful person. But yes, that scar is always going to be there. When I heard that, I forget where I heard it, but I was just like, oh my God. Like that's so, just that analogy is so cool. It lives on your face. It's a scar. You're always going to have it. Like, are you going to turn it into something that's negative, or are you going to acknowledge it every day and realize like I'm beautiful because of it? Because that happened to me.
That's when I look at my tattoos, that's like literally what I think, those exact thoughts.
Yeah.
Because like in my most traumatic period, which was like whatever, I guess 14 to 18, I got half my body is covered with tattoos. Like most people don't know this about me, but I started getting them when I was 16 years old. And
Why?
so I think it was just a way to like rebel, and I don't know. One, I do love tattoos. Like even if I wouldn't have what I would have now, but I would still have tattoos. Like I still get them, not to the extent that my body's covered, but when I look into the mirror, that's like what I think is like, that's my past. Like that was a stage I went through in my life, and
I'm beautiful now because
it reminds me of it. Like for a while I went through a period where I felt like I was like ashamed by them because it's not who I am now. But like I fucking own it because I went through that time in my life, and here I am,
Do you think you can heal childhood trauma?
I do think you can heal childhood trauma. I guess similar to the ways that you said. I think that you have a choice. I think you have a choice to like go one way and not let it, I guess, affect you. And like I get, and that comes with you identifying, right? Like the things that you went through and witnessing the patterns and the people that you saw and recognizing you don't want to live in those patterns or be like those people. So for me, that's the way that I have healed my childhood trauma. And maybe it's not healed. Like I still have things that trigger me all the time where I'm like, it'll bring it up. I still have scents or smell. There's like this specific hand soap. When I smell this hand soap, and it's years go by, but I told you I got sent to Mexico. I got like literally a prison in Mexico, and there was this hand soap, and I remember the smell of it. So like little things will trigger my trauma, but I like now live in this world where like I just don't want to be in those patterns, and I don't want to be like those people. And that's, I guess, what has helped me heal my trauma is recognizing that and then taking the steps to not live in those patterns or be like those people.
I feel like it's a practice too. It's like practicing a sport or practicing yoga. Welcome to your practice today, right? I feel like watching people go through it, you go through it, you sitting here talking about it, like you have to practice it every day. It's something you literally have to work on every single day, just like you have to work on a marriage. Just like you have to work on your relationship with your children or going in the gym to train. I'm going to train today because it's never going to be perfect. You're just going to continue to train just like you train your mind.
Yeah.
I think there's layers. There's so many layers, right? It's very tricky because we can get addicted to busy. I mean, we can
I'm
get
addicted to that.
We can get into the business of doing, which can be a bypass for feeling. Mm-hmm. And while that can lead to
like
a new
getting
life,
busy so you don't feel
like numb, like a numbing sensation.
Doing, right? Like I'm going to do, so I'm not going to do what they did. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do this differently. That is a way to create a new life and a new pattern for living. But is that the full expression of healing? No, probably not, because there's a level of disembodiment when you do that because it's all cerebral.
Yeah.
It's about stuff and accomplishments and accolades and what you can turn your attention toward next instead of, as things come up, kind of dropping into the physical sensation, going back into that place and giving your body a chance to come out of it and actually heal and say, I feel you, body. That's taking me back to that horrible time that was so difficult, that there's so much grief around that. There's so much rage around that. You are safe right now. Like you are safe right now. I am safe right here. I am going to take care of you. And your highest self, your capital S self, your intuitive self. Like I am here with you, even though my parents were not.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to give you the love that's a huge part of the healing. It's just being with yourself in the sadness, not to stay there and replay the tape, but to just go through it. So you're not doing a spiritual bypass and being like, distract.
Or like filling another void by doing something or something. Yeah.
This is why so many people get really, really rich and they're miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
No amount of money is going to make you spiritually fit. Period.
We have these conversations weekly.
Yeah, we were just talking about that with somebody. Okay, so physical therapy, now what are you doing? So you wrote the book, you went through the 12 steps, you have your own way of doing these 12 steps. That's what your book's about.
Yep.
And then now today you're on this like public speaking journey and like basically helping other people heal their trauma.
Yep.
Right?
I see you smile when she says that. It's pretty cool. You're like, I can tell how proud you are.
Well, here I was running a clinic and I loved the work. I felt like, okay, you just created something that was so necessary. So I'm treating these, high net worth people that are well-to-do and they're coming in and they're like, okay, I did regular physical therapy in network and everything still hurts. Can you make me better? Great. And then all of a sudden they're stuck in a cycle of dysfunction, like being addicted to busy or being addicted to thinness. So no matter what I'm prescribing for them that they paid all this money for, they're not actually fully doing the work because there's a spiritual issue. There's something that I call soul sickness. So I was watching it, but that's not why they hired me. So I couldn't really do anything about it. And then I lost my sister to a drug overdose. That was the thing I was literally dreading the most for 2 decades. The whole time I was sober, I watched her struggle. I did everything to save her and fix her in the old way. I did everything to stand back and lead by example. And no matter what, I still lost her. And that was, for me, that was the day that Samantha, the doctor of physical therapy, died as well. I was like, wherever I'm going next, whatever I'm doing, I don't know what that is, it has to tackle the spiritual side of wellness. That has to be at the epicenter of my message and my work in the world. And I knew on that day that I was going to write a book. I did not know it was going to be a modern version of the 12 steps. But when I really started writing and thought about, why am I writing this book? It's because I want to help as many people as I can. Great. Is this your latest version of fixing and saving the whole world? Maybe. But also, it didn't save my sister, and I'm clear on that. So what saved you? What is the thing that spiritually saved your life again and again and again? It is a modern version of the steps. It's this spiritual blueprint for living that is not religious at all. Because when I finally heard my intuition, to me, that became the whisper of God. So now anybody can say God. God can mean anything to anyone. It can be the most religious or the least. And I feel nothing. I'm not activated. I'm not triggered. I'm like, that's amazing for you. I found what that means to me.
Well, yeah, because the 12 step, because I'm not religious either. Like the 12 steps are all about God.
Yep.
Okay. So this is just more about like, I mean, there's something, because how the fuck did we get here, right? Like there's something up there. I don't know what it is, right? So I believe in something, but I don't know what that is that I believe in, I guess. So I guess tying it to something that's not as polarizing as just the word God
Exactly.
probably makes it more relatable for a lot of people.
Yeah. So when my book came out, it was sort of like, well, before my book came out, I opened up this whole creative side of me, right? That I told you I wanted to sing and dance when I was young. And by the nature of me trusting my intuition and saying, I can no longer just do physical therapy. In fact, I'm not going to do any of it for a while. I'm just going to open up the creative side that I've really put to rest. Dancing came back. Singing came back. I went on tour in Japan as a choreographer for this recording artist for 2 weeks at 40 years old with 2 babies at home. He heard me sing and he was like, can you sing? And I'm like, kind of. I kind of wanted to be Britney Spears when I was 19, but you know, that ship has sailed. And he's like, well, why don't we make music together? He lives 5 minutes from where I live in a random suburb outside of Los Angeles. So we started making music. And then when he got a chance to perform, I performed. And then I met somebody in the industry who's gone on tour with the greatest of the greats who was like, you have a really strong message. You have a really important message. What if we made music that corresponds to that message and see where that takes us? And I'm literally in the middle of making an album. And so along the way, having a book out, you know, you go on a book tour, you go on people's podcasts, you share your story. I've been on television sharing this story. It feels like that little girl that wanted the lights and the glitter and the fame, really because I was so empty on the inside and I wasn't getting what I needed at home, is sort of full circle back, having a chance to be in front of big screens. But I don't care at all about the outside stuff. I am so clear about who I am today and that my story matters and that there are lives out there that I might be able to touch and help and save. And that has given me such great purpose. So the thing about her dying is that it gave me permission to fully live. Everything that I was afraid to do, if I had a little bit of a fear to speak in public.
Why is that? Because you realize how that precious life is and how quickly it can just be gone, or what? Why?
My sister was the harshest example of watching somebody's spirit die. I've seen it in my mother.
I've seen it in my mother too.
Who's mentally ill to this day, who literally got evicted from the residence I got her placed in, such that she is now living out of a Motel 6.
Pretty much same.
I watched my father be an untreated addict for his entire life. They stayed legally married, my two parents, emotionally.
Still today?
To this day, emotionally, financially entangled. Up until the day he died, he was sick with stress, worrying about how much money he was going to have to give her this month. I have seen every version of what it is to not have a spirit that is alive on this earth. And whether you're living a life that leads you to a slow spiritual death or a physical one.
Well, they're dying. My mom's been dying since as long as I've known her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like,
so it's your
the nail
refusal.
It's my refusal
to be like that.
It's my refusal to not fully live every single day of my life. Every single day of my life, I am not going to let shame corrode my insides, because I think that is the thing that makes us the sickest and stops us from believing in our worthiness and pursuing the life we know we're destined for. I refuse to live a mediocre life. I know what it looks like. I know every version of what it looks like. I'm not interested in any of those versions. I'm only interested in the version that is filled with truth and authenticity and joy. I literally decided when she died, every single day, I'm going to chase down truth and joy. Every single day. If I get a day where I have both, it was a fucking great day.
Yeah.
That's it. Because that's all that matters to me. It reduces down
Well, I
what's
mean,
important.
that's all that really matters in general, if you think about it. Like, at the end of the day, what else matters?
But are people using those as their metrics for living?
Yeah,
Not at all.
And depending on like what frame of mind you're in, what mindset you're in, like, does that even resonate with some people? Does somebody even really know what true joy feels like, and happiness and gratification?
Yeah.
And being able to like surrender to your emotions and give back and be compassionate, have children, give yourself up to a spouse.
So for those who like feel like completely just stuck in trauma, like victim mentality, but like want to change because they recognize that they're stuck in trauma, like what is the first step for them?
It's a great question. I feel like a lot of people in this world right now, unfortunately, have like a victim mentality, a victim mindset. And I feel like it's maybe a sickness because of the way the social norms have changed, and social media, and just what people view, what people shouldn't be viewing versus what they should be viewing, and how they interpret it, etc.
I mean, I think victimhood is a trauma response, right? Because it's like fight, flight, freeze, right? In a way, it's a freeze. It's a way for you to go, everything around me is awful. This person's awful. This thing that happened to me is awful. It's all out there, and you don't have to, you're stuck. You literally feel like, I cannot do anything about this. I am powerless over this. You give your power away. But it's a way to protect yourself at first, and then it becomes completely debilitating.
Excuse. Yeah, that's your excuse.
People put
right?
themselves out there using social media platforms. Everything's so visible on your phone nowadays, and misery loves company, right? So if I'm pissed about anything, I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens. And it's just like that the victimhood, and just, again, that misery loves company.
People have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired.
It's
I mean, the thing is, if a pattern like
Totally
victimhood
agree.
is serving you, like people are going, oh my God, that sounds so bad. And it's allowing you to not really do the work required. Anybody who's stuck in victimhood is experiencing pain.
Yeah.
And they are not feeling or healing their pain because they're blaming everybody else. It's just like what I did with my husband. If only I could change my husband's mind, I will be okay. No, actually, I have to be okay first. And then whatever happens with him is whatever happens with him.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you can't change anybody. You've witnessed it. I've witnessed it my whole entire
Right,
life.
and
like,
so-
they have to be sick and tired, and they have to want to change in order to change for the better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways there has to be a level of pain that zaps you out of this way you've been thinking and living and expressing yourself in the world. And then you have a little window of opportunity to do it differently, to consciously create a new life, which requires
Through
a
that
ton
pain.
of practice
Yeah.
of new behavior, right? And so for me, when I'm coaching somebody, I'm using the 12 steps as a template, because why aren't we doing that? It's a non-religious spiritual template that people can use to get through life, no matter what the thing is. It could be, I'm stuck in people pleasing. It could be, I lost my sibling to an overdose. There is a literal blueprint, right? So that doesn't mean, though, that they always have to go exactly in that order. Like, what are some of the steps? So step 2, for example, right, is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. When I read that in early years of recovery, I was like, fuck you. Like, what is there God in the sky that's just going to go poof? You are now no longer insane, right? As a highly intellectual person, highly accomplished person who didn't believe in God, that was like, I recoiled. So what is the repurposing of that for someone who's healing?
So how would you say that?
So if someone is healing, they're using the 12 steps as a template. Okay, I'm powerless over that. I've lived my life up until this point as a victim. Like that I was unconsciously operating this way, or that I learned this to be safe in the world. And when I keep living this way, my life becomes totally unmanageable because I have no access to real power.
So that's your version of step 2.
This is still step 1.
Oh, okay.
So then what can I control? Oh, I actually can control me. So I'm not a victim anymore, right? And you start to tweeze that out. Step 2, come to believe that a power greater than myself. Okay, can I come to believe that there is a part of me, not the victim part, because she's in the boardroom.
Yeah.
But she's running my life. So is there another part of me that's higher than that has a higher level of consciousness, whether it's a loving part, an intuitive part. Can I believe there's a higher part of me that can show up in my life?
So a higher part of you, not
Yes.
this conscious thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there
that
a
makes
higher
sense.
part of me that can
Yeah.
help restore me to safety?
Yeah.
Because I'm not insane. I'm just living out these patterns that I literally learned that kept me safe. If I keep doing them when I'm aware that they're not working, that's an insane behavior.
Yeah.
But now that I'm aware and I know they're not working, can I come to believe that there is a different part of me that is not a victim that can help show up
I mean, it makes sense.
and restore me to feeling safe in the world? Because
Yeah.
right now I'm relying on my victimhood to feel safe, but actually it's hurting me.
Mhm.
It's not helping me anymore. So there's a trust. There's
Yeah.
this like certainty beyond logic, because logically you just keep thinking, I've just got to keep living this way. I don't know any other way to live. So you have to take a leap of faith and cultivate some level. It's got to be better than this. This cannot be it. My life is this small because of it. And I see other people out there who are doing great things. Why can't that be true for me? Right? So there's a process that I take people through. At the same time, my life didn't break open until I did the 9th step the way that I did it.
Yeah.
Because then I didn't have access to a higher part of me until I made an amends to myself and I could hear my intuition. So sometimes the place to start is, this is not your fault. Whatever's happening to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and I do think, like you said, like it takes like an immense amount of pain to like people to be like, I can't, like there's one or two ways. Like I'm either not going to live anymore,
Sink or swim.
or I need to figure out a way to live where I'm not in this misery all the time.
Yep. I mean, how did you do it?
I mean,
How did you do it?
I just fucking did it. What? Like it's hard? No,
Of course.
I mean,
Typical.
I just did it.
We're gonna have
like,
a therapy session right now. How did you do it?
I think that I probably in a sense was like an immense amount of pain, but I mean I was 15 to 20 years old. You don't even know who you are then, you know? I think I just knew, like I said, what I did not want to be like. And I tried to be the opposite. Like in the most basic sense, that's like how I pulled myself out of it.
But I think that's really important. So have you read Atomic Habits? Do you know that book?
We actually have the book at home. So I have a really bad habit. I buy books all the time and I never read one page. I don't know why.
True story.
I do this though. But
We have a
I bought
garage
the
full of
book.
books.
Okay.
Have I read it? No.
It's so good. I've read it so many times.
Okay,
I just
maybe
read
I
it
need to
again
read it.
recently, but you just said something that's actually in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways we change our habits, we're talking about getting out of trauma and victimhood and becoming somebody else, right?
Yeah.
That means you need new practices and new habits. Period. End of story. That's literally how you change the brain, is by behaving differently consistently again
Over
and again.
time.
Yeah.
So if you knew who you didn't want to be, and you saw other versions of who you wanted to become, and you took action in that direction of the person you wanted to become,
Yeah.
you were casting a vote. Every decision you make, every action you take is casting a vote in the direction of the person you want to become. So
Yeah.
if you keep being a victim, you're casting a vote for staying a victim.
Yep.
You basically kept casting votes for someone who's not an addict, who's not a victim.
Yeah.
So without you even realizing it, you sort of habit hacked your
Yeah.
life.
Well, I never said this before, and I was on Jeff's podcast yesterday, and I went down to San Diego, and I talked about something that I never talked about before. Why am I losing my train of thought right now? It was that though. Like he asked me like, why are you this way? Right? Like why? And I guess a part of me has like always knew I was going to be this person. Like an example I gave him yesterday is like, one of our hobbies is like, we'll drive through neighborhoods of $20 million houses. And in my head, it's like, I'm going to have that one day. Like, I'm going to have an office on the ocean one day. Like, I always knew I was going to have these things. I would tell myself that all the time. Like, I always knew that I would have this life. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I have this life, because I programmed my brain not to want to be a victim, not to want to live in this trauma, not to want to make excuses for the way my parents were. And I knew what I wanted my life to be, not like the superficial money aspect of it, but like I knew what I wanted to be. And like I don't know. That's always what I've told myself in my mind, like since I was a little kid.
She's
like
wired.
I am that person. And that's how I became that person, is because I always believed I was already there.
Yep.
She's wired in a way where like productivity and getting things done and being like kind of like having like the, you know, not chip on her shoulder, although sometimes I do throw that in her face.
I'm fine with that.
What's wrong with me? But just like living her life like that, like I check is kind of like every feather in her cap is like chicken soup for her soul. You know what I mean? It like kind of mends her a little bit.
But I mean, to your thing, like, am I masking something by doing that? I don't know. Like, am I keeping myself busy because I don't want to face something else? I don't think so. The Ashley today, 36 years old, the Ashley 10 years ago at 26 years old, maybe, you know? But like you said, like, I feel like I know who I am enough right now. But I've always known who I was going to be. So like when you ask me what heals trauma, like I've always known who I was going to be. And I've always lived like I was already that person. And that's like, I guess what's healed me.
Do you feel like your trauma affected your worthiness?
Good question.
My worthiness. I mean, I feel like I still struggle with stuff like that. Like I still struggle with like my body image. Like I'm never going to be good enough. I want to look a certain way. I want to be the best. I want to, you know,
have
like,
the biggest house, drive the nicest car, the imposter syndrome. When people actually give you a compliment, you're like, I think I could do better.
I don't think it's so much the superficial things. It was, and I talked about this with Jeff yesterday too. Like even 6 years ago, like what you asked me what I want to be. I want to be a fucking multimillionaire. You know, I want to be worth $100 million. That would have been my answer to you. But today it's like, I want to be happy. I want to be financial free, and I want to live a life I fucking love. You know?
Yeah.
So, but I feel like that change in my ego comes with age, and it comes with real life experience, and it comes through failures and like going through these learning lessons and realizing what's important. You know?
Her children too.
Having kids,
Our
becoming
children
a mom,
changed her.
you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's what I think heals trauma, is just like, I guess, having the mindset and not living in that victim mentality. And that's what healed it for me, I guess.
Yeah. I asked that question because when people hear that, they're gonna want to know how.
Yeah.
Great, you decided you didn't want to be that, a decision, and then believing in that decision so much every day, more than you don't believe in it.
I did.
Such that you're going to keep taking the action towards it. Right. Has to come from a place of worthiness. And I say that because in my own experience, like my life was circling the drain because I fundamentally I believed, at least in my marital crisis, that I deserved what I was getting, that the punishment fit the crime.
Yeah.
Until I didn't. Once I didn't, then I could hear my higher self, and then I could be directed by her, by the voice that was like, you can fucking speak on any stage you want.
Yeah.
You could fucking write a best-selling book. You could be a multi-million. You could literally do anything you want.
Yeah.
But that came from such a deep well of worthiness that was not there from my childhood trauma. So is there any point in which like you've been challenged to feel I'm not worthy? And then how do you show up for yourself in those moments? Like what happens when you have a body image issue and you're like, do you just
I've
push
never
harder,
not felt worthy. I've never not felt worthy. Like
That's huge.
I've definitely had struggles, right? Like the ones that I just named, but like I've never not felt worthy. I feel like it may actually be the opposite, where I've like felt too fucking worthy. I don't know. Like there may be something there, but I don't know. Do you feel that way?
No, everything you're saying, I feel like my observation, knowing you 10 years now, is pretty in line.
Yeah, I don't
And
know, but
your view on this has changed over the years too. Like you've softened your stance on a lot of these things and been more honest with yourself. And I feel like, you know, as your husband, watching you go through personal growth and you like living, because you'll never like get over your trauma. And I see that now. And I recognize that. But like you're actually learning how to live with it, like learning how to coexist and be roommates with it.
which is basically what you did.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
I've watched you go through
And
that.
it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you still practice it every day. And you even make comments to me A lot actually recently. And like, where you're like telling me that you recognized it without telling me like, hey, I recognize this about a person in my family today, or my business or my work or my children or you. But you'll make a comment where I know you're like telling me like, hey, I recognize this about this today. And like, this is how I went about it.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a lot though. And I mean,
I have something to ask you, but it's like a big question.
ask me.
Okay.
I'm here for this, man.
This is about you though, not about me.
No, it's
No,
definitely,
I know,
it's
but
about
no,
both
but
y'all.
but it's about this. This is
Okay.
a really interesting topic because, by the way, it's going to inform like how you end up speaking on stages about your own story, right? So I think it's really interesting and it's important for healing because you said to me, I asked you something the other day about your mom, and you said she's dead to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So to me, that is like a siren of, is that the end of her healing? Like, that's a way to handle it. That is a way to be like, nope, and onward, right? Which is a little bit of what we're saying. So it's an interesting mix of, you've done so much stuff to get through, even though you don't fully know what that is. You don't really understand the roadmap of how you've been
I
healing.
don't understand it in the way that you do. Like,
Right.
like the pinpointing aspect of it.
But you've done a lot of the things that are required to make real change. And at the same time, something like that is, I think, spiritually speaking, dangerous, to
By
our
me
to our
saying
soul.
that?
Well, when someone has crossed us in the worst way, betrayed us in the worst way, I mean, there's no reason, for example, right now, why I shouldn't have no relationship with my mother. I mean, she should be cast
But your whole thing's about forgiveness, right? Like, because forgiving sets you free,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
So where are you with that? Like,
Yeah.
what is your relationship to forgiving people who have hurt you?
Yeah. I think.
Can you pop some popcorn back there? I'm fucking here for this, man. I am here for this. I'm just gonna sit back and actually, can I come sit by you? Let me sit over
You
there.
can, just in case.
Oh,
Yeah, I
this is
mean,
good.
So, okay, when it comes to my mom, I guess for me, I've been disappointed from her for so long. And my mom didn't raise me. I raised her, because I was driving her car at 12 years old. I was fucking picking her up off the ground. I was making my own food because my mom was drunk in another room sleeping, right? Half the time. But I don't know. I guess for me, it's not about forgiveness. Could I forgive her? Yeah, I could. And I've talked to him about this too. Do I talk to her? Do I let her back in my life? I think for me, what it is I don't want her around my kids. I don't want her around my kids and I don't want her in my life. And maybe it's because it is triggering for me to have her in my I guess it is. It's triggering to have her in my life, and it's easier not to have her in my life because she's the most mentally ill person I know. Yeah. And the amount of damage she does when you let her back into your life, it doesn't just affect me. It affects him. It affects my kids. It affects my brother. It affects my sister. It affects everyone around us. So I guess that's why I don't forgive her, and that's why I don't talk to her, because she is the most toxic human being I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, there's layers to this, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to say, out of full transparency and relation to you, my mom went from being stable for a period of years to, I moved her out to California after my sister died, got her a whole place. And then I go to Japan, I go on this tour, I'm having this moment of my life that I've been waiting for. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, she's fucking manic again. I could just tell. Stop taking your meds.
You can tell in a second.
Stop taking your meds. Absolute. When I tell you, she showed up at my house, she brought strangers into my house. I had to call the cops on her. We went through months and months and months and months where I had to block her. She was being so emotionally abusive. So in the last year, it's been like a nightmare. And many of the healthiest decisions I made were to have zero contact. But I could also say at any given time, emotionally, I'm enraged. I feel betrayed. I'm hurt. Again, I'm grieving.
I don't feel any of that though. I don't. So I guess in a way, I have forgiven her. I do forgive her because I don't feel any of that. To me, she just doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. Like, I don't feel any emotion around her. She doesn't have power over me anymore.
Right.
She can't enrage me. She doesn't do any of those things.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess I did maybe forgive the situation and I've just moved on with my life.
Right.
But I don't, I guess me saying she's dead to me, because like I do say that. I mean, she kind of is.
Yeah.
Even though she's still here, but like I do forgive her. It's just I don't want to be a part of her life.
Which I think is healthy, right? So there's
I don't know.
no. Like, by the way, forgiving someone
Yeah.
is not the same thing as letting someone back in.
Yeah.
You could literally be betrayed in the worst way and never speak to that person again. And they can't have any agency over you. And that's the healthiest thing to do.
Yeah.
And also see it in a compassionate way instead of having any sort, because this is really complicated. Like, you're making a healthy decision by not having her in your life. So
Yeah.
me deciding to take my mom back in now, my mom's been stable again. I had to test that out to really see if that was true or not.
Yeah.
I eventually, after over a month of loving messages, went and met her at a diner for lunch. And I said, "You don't seem manic anymore." And she's like, "I'm not. I can literally feel my brain chemistry switching." And I started to invite her over on Friday nights, just as an experiment. Could I
Like slowly.
have my children be around her
Yeah.
while she's stable, and knowing full well that if I have to completely detach when she's not, then do that. And is that something I'd like to invite into my life, so I have maybe some memories that are good and happy once she's gone? Is like, I had to keep asking
she fine
myself.
now?
Yeah. But what's wild to me is that I'm at a place where I'm able to enjoy these sweet things that I'm seeing, her and my daughter having conversations. I thought I was never going to see this again. I thought she was just going to be found dead in a manic episode in her
That's
Motel
gonna be
6.
my mom. If my mom did what you were saying right now, I would be singing a different tune right now. If she got a job and she wasn't manic and she wasn't addicted to something or a total alcoholic, she would be allowed back into my life. She won't even get a job. She won't take the first step. So it's like, we must not matter that much, you know? Like, you won't even take the first step to get a freaking job. So you're not living in a motel or on somebody's couch.
Right.
You know, like that. I guess if my mom did what your mom was doing, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
100%. But it's like, she has to show me that first step. And if she won't even do that for herself, like, she's not thinking about her family or her kids, you know?
What's really interesting about becoming a mom when you have a lot of trauma is anything that's unhealed is going to show up, right? So my son's disposition is like mine, highly emotional, really sensitive. He goes into a shame spiral immediately if he can't figure something out. It's literally like I'm parenting my small self.
Yeah.
But for my husband, he's very neutral. He's very like, okay, let's move on. It's kind of like you, like, just let's go, next thing. And it is just taking him to his knees to have to meet his son in that dark, heavy space, right?
Yeah.
So has there ever been something so far in motherhood that's come up for you where you're like, oh my God, this is bringing up the way I was mothered or not mothered, and it makes me like cringe, or it makes me angry, or it makes me...
Questions for you,
I
young
don't
lady.
think so. I don't think my kids are old enough yet.
Yeah.
I think in the next couple of years, though, I'm going to experience that, and it is going to take me back and be like, whoa, you know?
What about the way you parent your kids, our kids?
Nothing's come up for me there yet.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a mom. Obviously, you're hard on yourself about everything. I'm hard on myself because I work too much and I don't take them to school and pick them up every day. Like, you know, like, or I might miss something. Like, I'm going to try not to do that, but I guess I'm hard on myself in ways. But they haven't done anything yet where I'm like, oh, like, you know, like that's a pattern, or I've seen that before, or that's Chris, or that's me, you know?
Yeah.
Although our kids, one each emulates both of us. I feel like Poppy's, her whole persona and her vibe is like kind of like me.
Yeah.
She's sensitive. She's sweet. She likes to, she's about more than I guess herself. Not that you're not, but Rocky, our youngest one, just like strong personality. Let's get shit done. Don't fuck with me. I'm gonna go do.
Fits her.
I'm gonna go do this. I don't want your help. You can sit over there and you can watch me.
Yeah. She's
Like, it's pretty wild, actually. It's almost to the T,
She
like their
scares the shit out
personalities.
of us,
Yeah,
actually.
she's scared. She's wild. She's gonna run the whole house one day. We already know it.
She's fucking
Our oldest is
scary.
a year and a half older, and she's so sweet. And she wants to
Oh my
like,
God, that is hilarious.
oh, she's so sweet, and she wants to like be a part of Rocky's like world. And Rocky will only allow her to be a part of her world in certain moments. Other than that, it's like, nope, don't touch me. Get away from me. I'm doing this. Get away. I'm not sharing. Like,
Yeah.
this is my world.
I mean, I could seriously sit here and talk to you for fucking hours.
I know.
I'm like so into this right now.
Okay, I want you to tell about what you're doing now, like the stages,
Yeah.
having these little events in LA, and
So when my book came out, I decided one of the things I was going to do, instead of waiting again for the world to tap me on the shoulder and keep putting me on TV, I was like, well, I'm going to create my own stage. So I threw an event where I got to share my story, much like I shared in 12-step meetings, but for the first time in front of the general public. And a lot of people came out to support me. It was amazing. It was like a 70-person turnout. And the feedback I got was, oh my God, you are a speaker. You didn't even say and like. You just, and I
your
love
pauses are so good.
pauses.
They're dramatic.
I felt so good up there too, right? So that, again, that little girl that wanted a microphone,
Yeah.
it felt like this is it. This is where the microphone needs to be, and this is what I need to be saying on it. And so that has evolved into a monthly speaking event in LA, which I call Heart Conscious Creators. And so when people are like, who's it for? What's it about? I'm like, it's for people who are consciously creating their destiny. So it doesn't matter if you're a CEO. It doesn't matter if you're an artist in the music industry. If you're awake and out of the subconscious patterns, if you are mindful and walking through your life going, how do I design my life in a way where I can fall in love with it every single day? You belong here. You're going to learn something. So now I don't just do my keynote. I bring other amazing speakers on the stage that have incredible stories. And it doesn't mean you have to be a 7-8 figure brand. It can just be a story of personal transformation.
Yeah.
And so it's all pit
love
to
it.
peak, grit to grace. And I've infused music into the event because I'm singing again. So it's like great speaking meets live music.
What's
love
like your
it.
genre? What's your favorite type of music?
The music I'm making now is pop rock. But I love, I mean,
Nice.
I'm dancing at this event too. The one coming up next week is on Thursday. And dancing is my absolute love, particularly hip hop. And I
Sick.
am a grown ass woman, but you better believe I am about to just go off on this little stage for about 2 minutes with one of my closest friends from the dance world, because it's what brings me joy. And so the event is essentially, selfishly, a place where I get to do all the things I love and at the same time build community and connection and create a networking experience for people with real meaning and impact, and not just, how do I become a billionaire?
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. It's like, obviously this is the first time I met you in person, but we've been talking forever. Like, you give me Lady Gaga vibes.
Ooh, I love that.
Does anyone ever tell you that?
Yes, I have heard that.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
you do. Like,
good call out.
Yeah. Doesn't she, like, Star is
the
Born?
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and even just like look, feel, I don't know.
Yeah. It is.
Lady Gaga, if you're listening, can we have lunch?
Yeah.
I love her.
I mean, building a community, I think, is everything now. People are looking for an outlet to be able to relate to in this crazy world that we live in,
Yep.
right? Looking for a sense of being, a sense of connection, a sense of like interaction. And obviously, you can like turn on your favorite celebrity and almost have instant interaction with them, but it's like so 2D.
Yeah.
Right? You get somebody in person, you have this community. It's like a sense of self-worth, a sense of belonging. And I think that's everything in this world. And I think more people need to understand that and seek that out, because I think that that can change and has changed our lives. I've changed people's lives and with my business by creating a community that's pretty big now. And I think it's the coolest thing. I think it's something that is so underrated and so just like, if you haven't been a part of it, you don't know what you're missing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also think, we're more globally connected through technology than ever, and we're also in a connection crisis. And the only way you remedy that is getting off the screen and getting in person, and exchanging real energy
sure.
and time with people.
I mean, it's
Energy.
nothing beats
said
that.
it.
Yeah.
Nothing beats that.
Human connection.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing beats it.
Okay, well, you're amazing. And we love you. And next
What?
week I'll be on your podcast so we can
Yeah,
pick the
you got.
conversation right back up.
I know it needs to be longer too. Where can people find you?
You guys can find me at Dr. Samantha Harte on social media, Harte, and that's the name across all the platforms. I'm very active on Instagram, so you can just literally DM me and I will respond. Or you can go on my website, drsamanthaharte.com.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming down and being a part of this little thing that we just started. And God, your story is so amazing. And you guys are like, I kind of want to just sit there and listen to you guys talk. I almost felt like I didn't even need to be here today, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're the
Thank you
best.
for having me.